Caribbean listeners and viewers, and of course, especially you, my audience of This Week in Interview. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview. This Wednesday night, the highlight of my week. Most weeks, I get to spend that hour or so with you. I really enjoy, and I said it's the highlight of my week. Um, some people call it hump day, Wednesday being hump day. That's my hump day activity, to spend an hour, hour and a half with you on a Wednesday night. So welcome to that. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is your first time as a member of the audience of This Week in Interview. A very, very special welcome to you. I hope you like us enough that you will come back and you will become like those folks that I call my regular fans, regular viewers and listeners. I don't take your time for granted. I really appreciate that you make the time to spend with us. So many things that compete for your attention. And of course, there's so many other programs on the various media. I really appreciate you authenticating what we do here and showing that you find it valuable. So thank you for that. Welcome to you if you're listening from Dominica on RVR Jams. DigiPlay Channel 59 carries RVR Jams, and they carry This Week in Interview Live. Also in the Toronto market, good evening to you. Radio Online SBE carries This Week in Interview Live, and so we want to thank them for their collaboration. Uh, you might be listening to us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, any one of those social media. If you haven't done so, I would invite you to give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like, hit the notification bell so you can know when we are on. But also share the live. Let people know that we are here. Last time, my guests, we went on for so long that and so many people had so much positive comments and feedback and asking when next, when next, when next. So I'm going to say by popular demand, we have back with us Dr. Dion George. He's a political scientist, a researcher. He has qualifications in business information systems. He's just an all-round, uh, good guy and highly educated, highly qualified. And of course, if you listened to us last week, you will also agree that he has a way of breaking his stuff down to where we can understand, even if the material is technical. And so I want to give him a very warm welcome. I'm not going to take the usual early break that we take. I'm going to tell you. I hope you have your beverage. I hope you invite the folks that you want to invite to come on with us, because I want to maximize my time with Dr. George. I'm not going to do much more and say much more than to welcome him back and to thank him for making the time to come back to us so soon. Dr. George, thank you so much. I appreciate you having you here.
Good evening, Mr. Anthony Drigo. I thank you for uh, invite. I think the last presentation we had was informative, and your listeners felt it. There was some utility in terms of information on the information that was dispersed. Tonight, we're having a part 2 on the topic. Um, Thank you for doing the flyers and the ad. You said that we're going to speak about socio-economic uh, viability and quality of life in Dominica, particularly, but in a general sense, the OECS. And
Yes,
yes,
because I think Dominica is each one of the islands. You can take any one of them, and they are representative of the others. Some more ahead of others, but in general, we have a common history. We have pretty much the same length of time historically that we've had some kind of autonomy on our decision making. We have the same type of political systems, and so one of the things that I want to explore is in the education of the audience in terms of politics. I think as young nations, we have a responsibility to have people like you who are technically trained to come on here and to help educate us. Because when you are young, you make a lot of mistakes. And the same thing applies to a country. When a country is young, they tend to make decisions that a more mature country will not make. And one of the biggest decisions we make is who we give our resources to manage and to distribute and to make decisions about how they're deployed. And by that I mean by voting. And that takes us to politics. And
Yes.
so that is your area of expertise. And so I want to you to spend some time and to talk to the folks about what is politics. I'll tell you where the context in which I'm putting that question in. Because so many times I hear people get despondent about being disappointed by politicians time and time again, and they say, "I'm not into politics. You talk politics. Um, all you're talking about is politics. I'm not in all your politics." And I think that those statements come from a position of inadequate information.
Correct.
And so
Very
Dr.
correct.
George, I'm going to give you the floor to just talk about politics and what we should understand when we say politics, and maybe you can see how it relates to economics, and then we'll launch into our discussion.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you, listeners, for taking the time to. I hope that this discussion would be one of information and learning. And I also hope it can develop our country, even if it's just on a thematic level where persons understand things in a underlying way that they see things differently, uh, where it might benefit all of us. And so before I start, let me take the time to recognize the author and the omega of all wisdom, which is God. And so we want to give him praise. And Psalm 121 says, I look to the hills from where my help come from. My help come from God. I will give heaven and earth, you know. He said he doesn't sleep, he doesn't slumber. And he said he guide your going out and your going in from this time and forevermore. That's Psalm 121. So let God be praised. Now, on the issue of your direct question of politics, there is an author named uh, Harold Laswell, and he has a very basic definition for what is politics. And this is good, eh? I think it's good for the listeners as well. He says that politics is who does what, when, and how. I repeat, who does what, when, and how. Essentially, he's saying that the issue of power, that there is somebody that can make a decision that decide who gets what position and how the resources are distributed. That's what it means.
Hmm.
Now, with that being said, let us dissect it. Politics is not about an individual. It's not about um, Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Roosevelt Skerrit or Lennox Linton. That's not politics. These are individuals that can be replaced anytime. Politics exists in institutions, and within religion, there's politics. If we have to have a new bishop in Dominica, that, my dear friend, is politics. If we have to have a new commissioner of police, that, my dear friend, is politics. And so the definition of politics in a more uh, elaborative way of who does what, when, and how is politics is an umbrella term that overlooks the issue of power where one has resources and they decide who and how they distribute that resource. That's what it is. That could be in your family, it could be in your relationship, and it could be in government or in any part of institutions. And so when people say, "Oh, I don't like politics," so what do you mean by that? There's politics in everything. The whole idea of politics is that somebody has something which is a resource, and they are deciding who gets it. And so that's the first learning lesson of the evening. And I just want to give a little overview of the next hour of our discussion. So the last time we discussed the IMF, and I want to thank you that we discussed my last two publications, which is Perpetual Dependency, CARICOM, and the IMF. And we also discussed intergovernmental relations, and that was good. And so for the new listeners, persons who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We talked about the IMF and we went through a historical view of it. So I can just, before I get into the nitty gritty of what we will discuss tonight, which, by the way, is about the quality of life of our people in the OECS and Dominica specifically. The view that we have been dealing with international organizations, the IMF, World Bank, and how they came about, the year, the reason why. And so the last show we dealt with that, so we won't spend much time on it. I think tonight, as the host, Mr. Anthony Drago, wanted to look into what are the economic theories that exist, and how do our Caribbean, specifically the UECS people, look at it? And what are some of the indices that suggest where we stand? And I guess the bottom line question is, where are we going? And so, with that being said, just a cursory review of the last presentation is the fact that the IMF came about in 1945, World War II, and it was the World Bank, it was the IMF, and it was the World Trade Organization. The last time I gave a whole historical view of how all of them began, but that was last time. But it's very important to understand that when they existed, we as Caribbean people did not exist. I say that because we were not independent. And so their policies were our policies. And that was noted. And then, of course, we went to look at what is a typical IMF program. And so essentially, it mathematically, it makes sense. Essentially, what they say is that that we should bring down our expenditure and increase our revenues. Now, one might ask, what does that mean? But what it means in retrospect is, and directly too, it means that one should cut down your expenditure, which means to cut teachers off. So where you have a class with 12 students and one teacher, right now it has to be 30 students and one teacher. And some teachers may have to roll their head. Where one was perhaps doing mechanic by his shop, never had to have a license. Now he has to pay a license. All right, so increase your revenue and cut your expenditure. These are just some examples we spoke about the last time. Something else we did the last time, again, I'm just giving a background before we get into the nitty-gritty of tonight's discussion. We had what is called a conceptual framework where we looked at different writers on Caribbean development. Again, very few persons have done primary research on Caribbean development. A lot of people, they read books and they present a theoretical perspective. But my research in perpetual dependency yield to the view that I called the Caribbean governments, and I really talked with them and asked them, what do you think about the IMF? What do you think about the World Bank, etc.? And so the conceptual framework, as in how do we contextualize it? I mentioned Walter Rodney, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, the view that, just a quick synopsis, the view that they have extracted a lot and not send it back in. A very good read. I also mentioned Carrie Livette, Reclaiming Development, Independence Thought on the Caribbean, where she said that on the global market, that there is a view that the global north, the colonizers, they have maybe 90% of the market. And the little 10% that we have, they're still trying ways to encroach on it. One can identify 1995 with Bill Clinton taking the World Trade Organization to court, saying that the Caribbean had received preferential treatment on the international market and so forth, which, by the way, as it applies to Dominica, which has cost us to lost our banana industry.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of positive feedback on the books that you recommended and on the authors. A lot of my listeners recognize the authors, right?
Yes.
But to bring it around to tonight's discussion, because last time I kept you along so long that you started falling asleep on my program,
No, I got up
and
early that
I
morning. Yeah.
tired you off. So tonight, to bring it back to tonight's discussion, um, these folks were, when I say these folks, the colonizers, the European colonizers who colonized the Caribbean and Africa, were implementing their political policy, of colonization. We've gone as far as we can go with the resources that we have. We're going to see where else in the world has resources, and we're going to commandeer those resources for our development. That is my words, but that is what it is. We were the victims of it, so of course we don't like it, but it worked for them. Hundreds of years later, they're still leading the world, um, in terms of economics and politics and leadership and power. Now, so tonight, on a Dominican and an OECS and on a Caribbean basis, how can we understand that lesson, right? So that we can understand that we have the same option. We can look to And when we decide which ones work best for us, how do we implement that political policy for the benefit of our countries and for the improvement of quality of life of our countries? So I'd like you to spend a little bit of time to talk to the audience about, and it might sound on paper like it's theoretical, but it's everyday life. What type of political policies are available to us? Which ones we've been subjected to by our leaders and by the influence of the world powers, and which how has it worked out for us? And if it hasn't quite worked out the way it should, how can we pivot to better political policy? Or is the answer better political policy, or is it that we just bad we haven't learned how to implement them properly? Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Very long question,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
but I
good.
want you to put it in
Yeah.
that context.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. Very good question, I will say. Um, well, they are existing. Okay, again, let me qualify your question. There are existing economic theories that exist. Again, there is no apology for talking about theory because theory drive policy. You best believe it. Theory drive policy. Now, in my book, Perpetual Dependency, we spoke about. So, what I did primary research. So, I called the Caribbean leaders and I presented to them, here are the existing policies. Which one do you subscribe to? My friend and the listening public, you would be surprised to know the result that the Caribbean leaders give. So, just as a point of information, there are about six existing uh, economic policies. There's the structural policy. Again, it might sound theoretical, but it's important to know it. I won't spend time on it, but I'll just mention it in passing. So the structural policy talks about that there are agriculture, fishing, and different things. The way a body works, structural, and that one should subscribe to all of these departments. There is another one called the expanding capitalist nucleus. Again, I'm sorry for all these terms, but it's just what it is.
I have a smart audience, man. Don't worry.
I know. Um, our good friend from St. Lucia, Arthur Lewis, said that we should adventure into growth in using our labor and capital. The third one is the neo-Marxist paradigm, who essentially speaks of capitalism, but also using a lot of labor. The fourth one is dependency analysis theory, which talks about the fact that the less developed countries like the OECS, CARICOM, etc., we should concentrate on what we have, and the fact that tourism depends on the global north. It does. If we don't get a boat, or we still win problem. If we cannot sell our products, we win problem. And so dependency theory says that ultimately we are still dependent on the global north. And of course, there is the Chinese, I want to use it as China to identify the country, but it's called the Maoist paradigm, which says that power comes from the bullet of a gun. Now, I want to pause on that point to let you understand the paradigm of the Chinese modus operandi. It says power comes from the bullet of a gun. So basically, they're saying that it's a really, how you would call it, it's an insurrection. It's a, how I would say it, it's a state power driven economy. Yes. And that's, and they're saying that it's not for you, it's for the state. And that's a different thing that we can have another conversation about. And the final one is number 6, which is the basic need paradigm, which says basically how we grew up, Mr. Drago, how we grew up in terms of basic needs is exactly what it means. Clothing, health, shelter, food. And they are saying that it's more like what one would refer to as a social democracy, where people are free, but there is also a view of that the government has a responsibility to provide the basic needs of the people. So yeah, I said it. These are the existing theories. What I did,
Six political
yeah,
theories. Okay.
yeah, and it's called economic political theories. Yeah. What I did, I approached the leaders in the Caribbean and I said to them, "What view do you subscribe to?" I say that very humbly and very respectfully as well. I did not get everybody, but I got persons to represent the leaders, and all of them. Well, let me not say all, but I can give you the data.
Mm-hmm.
About 80% of them says that they believe in a mixed approach. They believe that government should provide the basic needs theory, and they also believe in Arthur Lewis expanding capital nucleus, the view that we should get into banking and use our labor and etc. And that was their view. I am not sure if they are preview to, again, I said that with all due respect, with those existing theories, if they do have a certain paradigm that they operate with. I'm hearing it currently in Dominica that, and St. Kitts and other places, St. Lucia too, even Grenada, that the issue is passport sales, and that cannot be a paradigm, that it just cannot. And so the approach I took is I did some data collection where I got quantitative data. And to your point for this evening's discussion is, with all that research you do, how can it apply to the quality of life of the people in the OECS and Dominica? And with that being said, one would venture to define what that means. Quality of life would mean your lifespan, What is the average age that one is expected to live in your country? So if you were in Dominica, I think we have a very good one for that index. For that index, I think, yeah, I think it's about 78, which is good. It's more than what God promised. God promised three scores and 10. A score is 20. Three scores would be 60, and 10 means 70. So, Drago, if you're 74, you have 4 years more than God promised you. Okay. Now, there are other things. So, it's life expectancy, there's literacy rate. Literacy rate. There is, your GDP, of course, employment rate. And so, what I did is I did a sort of overview of the region, CARICOM, but tonight we're focusing on OECS and Dominica. And I look at what those numbers are saying. And I can share some with you later in the program for the listeners to know where we stand. And I also has,
But
yeah,
without cutting you short, let me ask you a question.
sure,
You 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 laid out six economic political theories.
correct.
Do you see, like, yeah, any of the governments look like they are aware of them, and they're making choices as to which ones they're implementing, or is it that um, they're just governing by some other means, and we have to try to see where it fits?
That's a fair
You
question. Dominica, I did not get the prime minister, but I did get one who represented him. And he thought that the research was an important research. And he expressed to me that the approach that the current Labour administration is using is twofold. His view was that they believe that the private sector plays a role, and also that government should play a role. So, what I analyzed from my conclusion, yeah, is that they are mixing up the theories. And so they are going with the government can play a role, is the state apparatus, is the Movis, is the China apparatus. When you say the state plays a role, and that's fair. The other thing they said that we have to look at the expanding capitalist nucleus is the view that we can grow the private sector and so forth. Um, in the theoretical sense, it makes sense. In the practical sense, that would be a discussion for another day because I
so to answer my question, the okay, if a trained person were to come and look at how the countries are governed, it, it's not clear that they're following any one of those established economic policies of position. I'm not looking at it as a criticism. I'm looking at it as where we are. Because I will tell you, uh, sometimes you start a business and everybody can add one and two, and you figure, okay, I can keep records and I can do whatever it is. And at the end of the year, I can add up how much money I spend, how much money I make, if I have good records. It's a totally different thing if you get a volunteer who is a trained accountant or a trained financial manager that's going to come and analyze your business and show you how you can manage cash flow, and what percentage you can do in reinvestment and all of those kind of things. You see what I'm saying? So it's natural that if you're starting off as a young country, that you're trying to meet needs and so on, and it may not be possible for you to say, or you may not even have the expertise on hand that can say, where Dominica is now. Let's do an analysis and say this theory or this combination of these two theories will serve us best. So I ask you the question, and by your answer, you're very diplomatic and very respectful. You didn't say no. There, don't- there doesn't there are no clues that point to any one of those policies. But that's what I'm getting. And so I'm going to give you back the floor, but also, should it then be a requirement that our economists and our politicians get trained in these existing theories, So at least they're not just throwing dots in the dark blindfolded. They actually can sit down and have a rational session and education about how it is done in the other countries which have had better results than we're having.
Incredible question. Incredible and right on point. And I will reiterate it before I answer. In other words, uh, do we elect leaders that has no experience about economic theory, political theory? How does a country operate? How does a country works? That they come in because they are popular or they are, I remember once upon a time I was in a program and they were talking about likability of a leader. I mean, come on now. I mean, they're in some European countries where a guy was a comedian. I kid you not, a comedian. And he won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, to your question directly, of course, the answer is yes. I believe that our leaders should have some sort of formal knowledge of politics, the way I defined it initially in the beginning of your program, and also economics, and understand how the world works, and to apply an agenda. I can tell you, if someone were to attack the United States, they're not just gonna go by day or night and decide a decision how they're gonna respond. They are theories that would drive their policy as to how they would respond. And for us in the Caribbean, banana. Before we had lime, cocoa. Are we gonna go back to an export oriented industry? Are we gonna go back or remain with a dependent industry like tourism, which is a dependent industry? Are we gonna go back to food processing or manufacturing where we can become more independent? Are we gonna say, if not passport, then what? I'm serious, And so we really have to consider the need for our leaders to be educated about the established theories that has brought nations to where they are, and we as the global south, as what before they used to call third world, that we can absorb and we can grow and apply those theories. There's something called the evolution theory, meaning that we have to see what other countries did to get there, which I do not subscribe to, but that's just a view. And I'm seeing something come up on my screen. I am to understand the
Yeah.
question.
So one of the is asking a question that if if the Caribbean governments they don't apply particular theory, if there's any particular theory is not utilized, the governments might fail to maximize economic growth and social elevation.
Okay, so
Which is basically asking the question that I asked probably even more succinctly. If those are proven political theories and economic political theories, but we don't seem to be able to follow them, how are we going to guarantee results? How can our results be predictable?
yeah,
Are we
I want to
shortchanging our
thank
people?
I want to thank the contributor very much. That's a very poignant question. Um, and I guess my response to it is again, it ties in with your question, the need for our leaders to be apt, to be educated. When I say education, I don't mean a degree, I mean to be aware, to have knowledge of what exists, how other countries have succeeded, and that we can implement it. I think that's the simplest answer. Yeah. Essentially, are we going to go back, according to the Calypso, to the soil and have an export oriented economy? Are we going to go back, or are we going to invest in business, commercial? And so, what is your view? You cannot tell me It's about selling passport. Impossible. Another question, Mr. Drago.
Policymakers should be intentional and thoughtful about considering the implications of their policy options before they act. These policies can save lives or cause premature deaths. They can prevent disease or drive up health costs. They can reduce inequities or widen them.
Yeah. Anyway, good point. I want to, if you mind, touch on some of the data. I mean,
Let me ask you to stick a pin in there because I have to take a commercial break.
okay, that's fine.
I have to acknowledge my sponsors. When we come back, you're saying that you're going to share some data
Yes,
that
about
may give evidence as to how well our economic policies or lack thereof have worked for our people and how they vary in different islands. So, folks, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Dr. Dion George. We're talking politics, but as I always say on this weekend interview, we don't do the same thing the same way like everybody else because then there'll be no need for us. We always try to present it from a different angle, from a different perspective, and try to leave you a more thinking person and a more quote unquote educated person than when you sat down at the beginning of the hour. So stay tuned and we'll be right back with my special guest, Dr. Dion George.
Presented by. Presented by.
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
How much dominance? Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back after the break. Thanks for staying with us through the break. And thank you to all the sponsors. I don't know if you have noticed that we have some really dynamic videos happening right now, all compliments the good work of Man's Audio Visual, as well as our flyers. So any type of promotional, graphic, audio, visual work that you need, you should contact them. Very professional, very well equipped, very responsive, very business-like. Man's Audio Visual. Well, folks, my guest tonight on this weekend interview is Dr. Dion George. Um, Dr. George is the author of two books on politics, on economics. He wrote about our relationships with the IMF and some of the other international funding agencies. And tonight's discussion is loosely centered around that, in the sense that, um, when do we as a Caribbean people progress from what we might call Vai management to application of management theories? You know what I mean? Like, when do you become professional? When do you stop being amateurish? So you just doing what, because there's so much needs as a young country. You almost cannot miss. We need a road, we need a school, we need a hospital, we need a this, we need a that. So you just do it. Whatever resources you have, you try to apply them as best as you can. But at some point now, you have to be able to level up to the next stage in development. You have to be more strategic. You have to be more deliberate. As Didi Easter said, you have to be more intentional. If we have $1 million to spend, how do we determine how to spend that $1 million? Are we going to apply it to the most urgent things, or are we going to apply it in such a way that that $1 million can multiply? So we may sacrifice another 2 years of hardship, but when that application of $1 million blossoms, we can take care of it and even more, as opposed to spending the $1 million on urgency, and then that same thing deteriorates because there's nothing else to maintain it. Those types of decisions have been made by people before. They have been studied and they have been developed. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of economic political theories in deciding how we would allocate our resources? And so that's basically what we're talking about. Um, I'm going to go back to Dr. George, but before I do that, I want to congratulate the new Kalinago chief. Miss Annette Sanford won the elections for Kalinago chief. I think she's the first woman chief. I don't quote me on that, but I believe she is. I apologize for not doing that research beforehand. Um, but I think she's the first. Either way, though, congratulations to her on her victory in the elections. And of course, we all keeping track of these American developments where a lady of Caribbean heritage has the potential to ascend to the White House, to the White House as president. She's already there as vice president, and so we're looking at that with bated breath. But let's get back to the topic at hand. uh, Mr. Dr. George. We were grappling before the break. We were grappling with the concept of the application of economic theory, and sometimes the person who is popular enough to win the election may not be the person who has the training or the qualifications to apply those theories. And so in an environment where, when a party wins elections, they tend to bring their own team with them, and they appoint party loyals into positions that they may not necessarily be the most trained or qualified people. When we were ruled by colonizers, that wasn't a big deal because we had things like permanent secretaries, which were true permanent secretaries. So it didn't matter who the governor was, or who the technocrats stayed in place and gained experience over years, and they could run the affairs of the country. But now that party politics is starting to play, you may have the person who won the election, who is made a minister, not having the appropriate training and experience and knowledge about those things, and he brings his team with him or her that also lacks in that same area. Let us see what you think, what you've observed, what you found out in your research, and let us hear your professional opinion as to how well that system has worked for us. in the 40, 50, 60 odd years that the Caribbean islands have been independent?
Well, it's not much years. It's just very few. I mean, we started independence in the 1950s, thereabout, with Jamaica, then Trinidad, and it's not much. We are very young, developing countries. I have always ventured to support a view that we should represent each other. Let me tell you, Drago, um, where we strong, where the Caribbean is strong, is in the University of the West Indies. Oh, we are bright people. And when I say we, I mean we. You are a very bright guy. I think DBS, Kyrie, and Man Dominica have bright people. The OECS, the Caribbean, we are bright. We are bright. Now, how do we show that for the University of the West Indies? In terms of skills, cricket, to go and play a test match against your colonizer who has designed the game, he created the game, and to compete with him and to even beat him at it, that too, I think, give credence to our tenacity. I would venture to argue also that your question, how do we, what was the question again?
I was saying, what have been the outcomes of the way in which we have governed ourselves? Because you said you had some data that you were going to share
Oh,
about that.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. My friend, people might be surprised to know that the United States stand at number, I have it right there and I'm going to read it, and excuse me for doing that. US, number 12 on what is called the Quality of Life Index. You, when we spoke, told me, what is quality of life? How does Dominica do? And IMF and all these things we're talking about. But we want to bring it to the core tonight. And the quality of life, basically, my friend, is one, your life expectancy, your education, child, how much child rate,
Mortality.
yeah, mortality rate.
Mhm.
Yes, and these are the things that measure the human index. And the United States reached number 12. Number 1 is Luxembourg. I've always said that. It's Luxembourg. It's in Germany. And number 2 is Netherlands. Number 5, Switzerland. Then you have Norway. America, right, number 12.
What about those countries? Those countries that are clustered in that area of Europe. What about them? That
Oh, yeah. There are others. You
I
have.
know what I'm saying. What about them that makes them stand out as number 1, 2, and 3?
I'll tell you why. There are different indices. That's a very good question. Anyway, I want to humble myself and say I don't want this discussion to be too academical.
No, this is practical. What about those people's lives
Yes,
that makes them have the best quality of life that we can learn from? There's nothing
right.
more practical than
So
that.
there are different measures that they use. So there
Mhm.
is one called the Quality of Life Index. And so Luxembourg rates at 219. Denmark rates at 202. Switzerland is 204. The US, the United States, is at 185.
And where's Dominica?
Oh my God, have mercy, my brother. I was busy today. I did not get, but
Oh, you
no,
don't?
hold on.
Okay.
No, but I will get to Dominica on some different indices. I and
Mhm.
promise you I will.
Yeah. No, it's fine. We're having that discussion.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
in that
let me give you more. There is something called the Purchasing Power Index.
Mhm.
In how much money you make and how much you can spend it. Luxembourg number 1 again. I really want the listening public to just get a drift of what we are saying tonight. At least they could live here tonight with some learning data. That Luxembourg is still number 1. The US is what number? What number? They're still number 12. Switzerland number 5. Safety. This is just crazy. Now, let's get to the OECS. what I did is this afternoon I did that because I had to go and do some business today, but I put some data together. So I look at the population of the countries, and let's just get to the OECS. Antigua and Barbuda, population 100,000.963. GDP per million, whatever.
I just tell listeners, if if it looks like it's small, just make your screen full screen and you'll be able to see the numbers.
Oh, excellent. Oh man, Drago, you are the best, man. You are the best. I'm telling you. Yeah, that's what I gathered, and that's from my book. Yeah, and so if you look at Antigua, you can look at their population, you can look at their GDP, you can look at their GDP per capita. I mean, how much a person making per household a year. Yeah, and you can look at the HDI, which means human
Development index.
Thank you, sir. And you can still look at that GDP, and you can look at it. And so let's look at Dominica now. Dominica is not far behind, you know. I mean, look, our population is much lower, and I really hope that the listeners and the viewers can have a look at the slide that you have so excellently put there. I'm so thankful for that. Dominica population, it says 73,000 thereabout. And you know the good thing about Dominica, our debt was very low. Drago, have a look at that. It was low. Yes. And oh my God, man. Our GDP per capita is low. Yeah. So that means Antigua them doing better than us. And that's fine.
Yeah. That's not fine, but okay.
So you say it's not fine?
Of course not.
Yeah, but so I presented the data there, and I thought to myself, it would be good for your listeners and your viewers to have a look at what it is and where we stand in comparison to the rest of the Caribbean, that they can see for themselves.
And where the Caribbean compares itself to the rest of the world. You know, that is important as well, right?
No, but I showed you.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you showed us the wider thing, where folks are doing really well and living in heaven. And then you bring it to the Caribbean, where we're not quite in heaven, we're not quite in hell yet. But in that soup, the countries are positioned relative to each other. And so it's brought in proper context.
Yeah. But you see, Dominica is not that far from the other countries, you know.
That was well.
Now, what I will say, I think we are getting to the point where it's getting out of hand, and I want to say that categorically. If you look, this data I think is 2019, 2015 thereabout, and you can correct me, and you can go online, and all the listeners can Google it.
This is from your book, so
yes, it's from my book, but the research, the listeners can also go ahead and verify it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would encourage them to do so. Yes. What I am saying, look at all these countries there. We have Dominica, we have Barbados, we have Belize, we have Guyana, we have Haiti, we have Jamaica. We can look at their population. By the way, if anybody is looking at this data right now, what they will see is that Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, and Trinidad makes up more than the entire rest of the Caribbean in terms of population. Yeah, look at it well. Yeah. We are nothing compared to their population. I mean, you're talking about Jamaica have 2 million people, Haiti have 8 million people, Trinidad have almost 2 million. I mean, and Dominica have how much? It says there's 73,000, but I think it's maybe 60,000. And it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying that we are really small, you know. And these things matter, my friend. And the program that you're having tonight, it matters. We have to realize who we are in the world. We are very small. We really cannot compete. Now, I will give credit to Alec Afanias, Michael Louis, and Calvin Hodge.
The Calvin Hodge, the century man.
I will tell you that they have upheld The West Indies cricket, I tell you, is the University of West Indies and West Indies cricket team that have us going now. Now, I have all this data there, and we're trying to analyze this data and look at the population. We're looking at the GDP. We're looking at the per capita income. We're looking at the HDI, and all these things might say, oh my God, what could, well, it makes sense. And so I guess, my friend, the bottom line question is, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? It's 9 o'clock, and I'm saying to myself, okay, we have looked
so
at
as a trained political scientist, a researcher, okay, someone who teaches government, and talk to folks who are in leadership positions in the community and so on. Where do we go from there? Can you point us? I know it's a question that needs a whole week of shows where we can, because there's so many different facets to it. But if we were to broad paint it, broad strokes, where does Dominica, where does the Caribbean go so that we can see an upgrade in the quality of life?
Okay, and I will humbly say, I will piggyback on your questions. I think, Mr. Drago, you did very well to challenge me on my presentation, and then you questioned me. And I think that's good. It's really good. Let me answer you. One, the leaders need to be educated about economic political theory. That's number one. And I cannot convince myself that they are. I think people get elected based on other indices, on other views, popularity, handsome, nice, dimples, and funny things that I just don't think is important. That's my view, right? I think you should know what are the economic theories that exist. You should know how the world works. That's number one. Number two, you look at the numbers I showed you, and I'm so happy that your technician was able to put that online for the public to see. I think this is really good. I think that's a good program because they can see for themselves. And if they want, they can research it. The numbers as to where the world stands. And if someone, he can go back to Luxembourg and the United States where it stands. I mean, the last show we had, oh, Sam, thank you. Yes, Luxembourg always number one. The US number 12.
So to keep in the conversation that we're having, you think Luxembourg is number one because they're actually applying economic political theory?
No.
And they're not just shooting in the dark?
The last program we had, I told you about coefficient, sorry for using such a word, but it's called the Gini coefficient. And what it means is if you have $10 and it can buy cod fish and bread for $2 in Salisbury, but if you go Roseau, it's $4 for it. How much is your money worth compared to Salisbury and compared to Roseau? It's almost 50%. It's $2 to $4. Luxembourg, apparently, the cost of living is cheaper. And again, that was the first of your program. That was the pinnacle of the quality of life. So yes, people in the US may make more money, but the cost of living might be better in that place. And that's what the Gini coefficient measures. And it's a big thing, but I try my best to break it down. Yeah. And so there are different measures. Now, GDP, clearly the US is number one. Oh, you best believe it. Yeah, man. Number one, the US. Yeah, GDP. The government spends money. GDP per capita, how much every household hold. You can look at the data. I have it there. And I'm so happy that Mr. Sam George is showing the public the data as it comes. And this is interesting because what it shows here is that persons can see where the world stands. Now, let's come back to the Caribbean. We did look at the Caribbean and we see where Dominica stands. We are not that far behind, you know. But my friend, I really do think we are tipping the debt to GDP ratio. But let me just end by telling you this, or where do we go from there in terms of the socio-economic and the quality of life and how it matters. We have looked at several things. We look at our last show, we get a cursory review, we look at some new data, and the data is presented, and we discussed the data, we argued it. Okay, so where do we go? Do we take more loans from the IMF? Do we have another? And initially, we talk about the existing economic political theories that establish. I mean, if you want, we can continue, and I can tell you what that country say, what the other country said, which they explore.
Well, we have a few more minutes, but I would really like to talk about what we can do. If you were able to determine which one of those theories would seem to be most applicable based on the stage of development where we are. Of course, it would be your opinion, but it would be a qualified and professional opinion. That's what, if with the last few minutes of the program, that is where I'd like to go. So the listeners, we can say that, are we satisfied with our healthcare when every time something more than a flu or cold, we have to try to raise money to fly the person out of Dominica to get what should be basic health care? There are some things we cannot expect to do everything, because even in the US, depending on your condition, they will fly you from New York to a specialized hospital in a different state. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the availability of a certain benchmark of healthcare, so that up to a certain level we can take care of it. Our people don't have to keep going out and raising tens of thousands of dollars to reset somebody's foot because they're not doing it properly in Dominica when they have a broken leg. Something simple. This is just an example. How is it that how can we change it that the only aspiration that our young people have is to migrate? What kind of political, economic policy would most suit us to help turn those things around?
Well, I don't think that's a fair match. I don't think we can put economic policy.
I'd like to hear why you say it's not a fair match.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you. This is really local politics, and so we're talking about healthcare and flying people out. This is kind of different from applying an economic policy as a general policy. Yeah, that's my view. What I will say to your question, which I think is a very fair question, I think it's very fair, because what you are looking for and the utility of your program, which is a very healthy program, is how can we make things better for the quality of life of the Dominican populace. And the answer to the question, I would say, is this. One, we need better governance. That's number one.
But what does better governance mean? What does that better governance mean? Somebody who knows the theories that can apply it, or what does better, what, as professionals? Okay, so I'm an engineer, and you tell me you need a stronger house. What do you mean when you say you need a stronger house? I say, okay, you in Dominica, so you're prone to tremors, depending on where you are, and you're prone to hurricanes, or you might be next to a river. So a stronger house means something that can resist hurricanes or earthquakes or whatever. When you say we need better governance, what do we mean by that?
Well, today I listened to QFM and I heard that their money is missing. I heard that they are selling passport under the required price, and people are trying to justify it. I heard that the hospital has no medication, a lot of things like that. I can go on and on. I mean, if you want to talk local politics, we can.
Right, but I want to talk about in the context of the application of economic and political theory to fix those
Right.
things.
So, oh my God.
So maybe what I'm saying is that, okay, we were colonies, and so the colonizers set our agenda, and
Yeah,
obviously they set it for their benefit.
correct.
Produce limes so that we can get lime to drink it for our rum. Produce bananas so that whatever it is. Produce whatever they felt they need, tobacco, cane, whatever. So we took over that. And it's only natural for the first few years, we have no choice but to stay on that track, right? How do we then set our own track for the benefit of our own people? Now that we're not being forced to exist for the benefit of a European country or a Chinese country, how how do we as Dominicans wrestle with our political reality to make sure that the resources in Dominica gets allocated for the benefit of our Dominican people?
Anyway, Mr. Drago, I will tell you that those questions you asking me there is dissertation questions. You know, it's like I have to do a whole research to answer you.
But I know you're up to the task. That's why I just like God, I'm not giving you a task that I don't think you have the capacity to handle.
Did you say you just like God?
That's what God do. God doesn't give you a challenge. They say God don't give you a challenge unless He knows that you have the capacity to
Yeah.
handle the
Anyway,
challenge.
I will tell you. It's a very deep question that would require more than just one evening discussion. But in my short analysis of it, I'll say this.
Mhm.
One, we had people like Eugenia Charles, and I'm gonna be personal. My father was a defense force. He never liked Eugenia Charles. Of course, she banned them. So why would he like her? All right. But my mom, who I love very much and who is still here with me, she loved Eugenia Charles. Now, you don't ask me what is my disposition. I, I might be in the between. Yeah. But I say that to tell you that, yeah, Eugenia Charles had a very strong apparatus for the private sector. You must recognize that under the Skerrit administration, a lot of private companies has left. That's bad. That's very bad. And the government, when I mean the government, I'm talking about the incumbent ruling administration. Um, this passport thing is getting in trouble now, and oh my God. And so as one thinks as to how do we fix that, look at the other nations, how they have done. Well, I cannot give you in 1 minute economic policy to fix Dominica, and that's not a fair question. But I will say that we can go back to agriculture.
So let's write the next book. Let's write the next book to address that then.
No, but I can give you some.
Your third book.
I can give you some talking points. The talking points is one. Well, my third book will be on dementia, by the way. Yeah. I really want to talk about my experience with my mom. Yeah. But in terms of we have to go back to. I mean, Saint Lucia still exporting bananas, Mr. Drago. Saint Lucia exporting bananas. Come on. So what happened to Dominica? We can export bananas. So you tell me Sigotago, how they call it? The disease that it had.
Black Sigatoka. I'm a farmer. You can't talk to me about agriculture anyhow you want. I'm a farmer.
You
Anyhow,
kidding me? So you're from Cassibros?
that's a different question. I'm from Cassibros.
And so you can tell me about that if St. Lucia
Black
can export that.
Sigatoka.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think Dominica can export banana too. And I mean, look at okay. I mean, we're coming to an end, but let's just talk.
We're going till 9:30, so we have about 15 more minutes.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Consider that, Mr. Drago. The Prime Minister says he's gonna give help to Grenada. Of course, I have friends from Grenada. I went to Midwestern. I have a lot of friends that we play cricket and stuff like that together. I heard people call the Q95 program. You want to read that
No, 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 that's okay. I just put it for the rest of the audience to see the comment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm saying to myself, the points that some of the callers made on QFM, I thought some of it made sense. They were saying buy all the products and just ship them to Grenada and St. Vincent. What do you think about that?
Buy all the products available locally.
Locally
Mhm.
and ship them. I don't know.
So, I'll answer you in this way. When the hurricane season was approaching, I brought my guest on my program was Mr. Lennon Matthew. He is a geologist by training and by profession. And we were talking about hurricane. I guess we don't do regular things on the show.
Anyway,
Bring you
I
some.
don't wanna get romantic, but Lennon Matthew was my roommate for 3 years. I mean, when I say roommate, I mean in the same room we slept. Anyway,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is very
It,
public.
it
Yeah,
was in college.
in college. Yeah,
Right. So one of the things that came out of our discussion is hurricane economics. Because we said what happens when there's a hurricane and it devastates a country, the American economy benefits more than the local economy. Because what do? We make barrels and we send hundreds of barrels and stuff down. And we said, why can't we do hurricane economics and organize ourselves so that when a hurricane happens, the majority of the relief supplies comes from our neighboring islands. And so what you're telling me
so you are in concurrence with what I'm saying.
is a direct app. And when we had that conversation, the hurricane had not passed us yet. It was just the
And
approach
I
of the
never heard
hurricane
your
season.
conversation. So you are saying
Uh,
that you agree with what I'm saying.
Definitely that when I didn't push back at you when you were laud in the University of the West Indies, but I don't have the same opinion of you as about the University of the West Indies, because those are the things, the premier university in the region. Those are the areas they should be leading in. What happens to the economic department in the University of the West Indies? If Leonard Matthew and myself can come up with it on an hour program, and you can come with the same thing in an hour program, where are all these intellectuals that you meet? Why
Scholars.
can't they come out with those things that can change outcomes and quality of life in the Caribbean? So I'm sorry to take so much out of the 15 minutes we have left, but I wanted to bring it to the listener because a lot of the listeners were listening when Len was on, and we were talking about that. That when a hurricane happens, Home Depot in Florida and those places have no more lumber supply. Walmart don't have foodstuffs because hundreds of barrels are pouring out of the U.S. into the islands. So the U.S. economy is benefiting from the hurricane hitting an island. Why can't we look at that and say, listen, if a hurricane happens, let's send a boat to Dominica for water. Let's send a boat to Dominica for agricultural produce. Let's go to Guyana to get timber. Let's go to Barbados to get whatever Barbados have.
Flying
Why
fish.
why can't that be organized in such a way that the Caribbean, because Dominica is going to give money to Grenada, so if Dominica can benefit from the relief supply, isn't that quid pro quo? So yeah, so yes, I hear what you're saying about the way forward is people think it's theory and it's not, and there's theory and there's practical. But as you said at the start of the show, theory drives policy.
And that's
And I'll
very
take it
correct.
one step forward and say policy drives action. So where are our intellectuals who can sit down and look at those things and help to organize it so that those things occur?
But Mr. Drago, I would tell you that I'm happy of the program that you had with Lennon, my roommate. Lennon is a tall, very strong, strapping guy that used to bowl fast. He always said that Dion, you like pace. I bat. I'm not a bad batter. I say that humbly. But in all seriousness, these things that we looked at tonight, including the established economic theory, which I did brought a primary research to the head of states of the Caribbean leaders. Some of them may or may have not been aware of what they are. but they did subscribe to what they think that they are doing. And what I get as a synopsis is the view that they think it's a mix economy that they believe in. Arthur Lewis, the capitalist nucleus, and they also believe in some sort of communist sort of stuff where they believe the state has a nucleus to play, and that's fine, and that's their view, and that's okay. And the US is different, as you know, but and then tonight, what we did, which I hope that the audience appreciate, is and I want to thank very much Mr. Sam George for sharing, or if it's yourself who did it, sharing the data to show who ranks number one on the human index and GDP and all this stuff. And then we came to the OECS and to show where we, Dominica, rank, and where the other OECS countries rank. And then we try to analyze what that means and how do we go forward. I really hope that this program serves some sort of utility, some sort of information, and I hope it was sort of educative.
It was. I'm pretty sure it was. It's not a boast, but we don't have programs on This Week in Interview that doesn't educate our audience. That's why I have folks who come back every Wednesday for the last 9, 10 years. When they're not there, it is like a hole. It's like when my mother died, the Catholic Church leaned on her side because one of the pillars was gone. Uh, yeah, be no Catholic. But in all seriousness, though, that is what I aim to do. And tonight I think we did not disappoint. To At the very least, to get the listeners to start to think about areas that we don't normally think about, because when election is coming, we get caught up in the frenzy of the emotion of likability, and that's what elections is. That's what elections are. Is a sales speech, and people don't buy things on logic. People buy things on emotion. And so the one that can appeal to you emotionally is the one you're going to vote for. So you might have somebody who this happens in Dominica a lot. You might have somebody who is struggling, and they, even if they make the connection that they're struggling because the government has not been running the affairs of the country the way it should. But if Anthony Drago is the Labour Party candidate in Casperas and I like Anthony Drago, I'm voting for Anthony Drago, without realizing that by voting for Anthony Drago, you put in the Labour Party back in power to continue to misgovern things for another three,
You're
4 years.
very correct. So you're very correct. I have had persons, even in my own community, who have shared that very same thing you said,
Yeah, yeah.
that they voted for him but then you put in the same party in power.
Same
Anyway,
party back in power.
hold on a
Yeah.
while. I am not here to talk about regime
No,
change.
no, no. We're not docking that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that the conversation tonight, what
Yes.
I hope it achieves, is to get people to think about things more critically.
Oh, and
And
with in-depth knowledge as well.
you're right. So not just go with the first feeling or the next feeling. Actually try to
Understand.
look at it for what it is. Look
Yeah.
at the texture. Look at the different layers. And then therefore be able to make a better decision. So okay, Anthony's a nice guy. When he drive into Roseau and he see me, he always giving me a ride. I know him, I know I'm gonna vote for him. The next thought is, but if I vote for Anthony, I'm indirectly voting to put the same government back in. So maybe although I like Anthony, I'll roll my nose and not vote for him because I want to see a change of government. Or it might be the reverse. I don't really like this person, but he represents this government, and the government has been doing a good job. So I'm going to vote for him so that the government can continue to do what they're doing. I'm just saying that what I hope we achieve, and I think we did, is to get folks to pause and think about politics and how politics affects them in their everyday lives, so they have a basis on which to make political decisions.
Anthony, you as a master's in engineering, I think you are a very acute journalist as well. And I'm not just blowing your trumpet, but I say that with all sincerity because you mentioned a word there. You said politics. And in the beginning of the program, we defined what politics is. And we said that politics is who defines what, when, and how. And we also gave a more complex definition. We said that politics is the idea of power, that someone with resources decides who get how these resources are distributed. And we said it's not only umbrellaed on the view of government, but it's also in religion, in your family, in your job. There's politics. And so I would like the listening public to leave with the view that politics is in everything. And that's exactly what it is. That somebody has some resources and they decide who gets it. All right. And
Right.
the other, yeah. And then we were able to show some data on the global human index and quality of life. And we were able to zero into OECS, where we also provided that data. And we were also able to talk about Dominica itself. And I want to thank you so much for inviting me. I think it was worthwhile. And I hope the listening public appreciates it.
Yeah, certainly. And as I said, I thank you for agreeing to come back on so quick, you know, and spending 90 minutes and coming well prepared. Folks, I want to encourage you to purchase Dion's book. He didn't put me up to this. Um, and this is not, but we need to support our folks who are doing the research, who are writing the books, who are presenting the theories to us, because that is one of the things that we're lacking. We're lacking formal um, edu- education. This is not a dung put to say that you everybody needs to go to university, but I'm saying that we grew up in the village and we know that even if people didn't go to high school, they would walk around with their book and sit down by the river chilling and read a book. On a Sunday afternoon, you see the young girls walking around, young boys walking around with their books in their back pocket, and they sit down somewhere quiet and they read. And that is what we need, because we cannot learn everything by experience, our personal experience. We learn by other people's experience, and part of that other people's experience are written in books. And there are millions of dollars that are spent at universities and colleges all over the world to provide data and to analyze data and to provide theories. And we can find out about them for free by just reading the books. And so I really want you to start here and buy Dion's book, Perpetual Dependency. He wrote that book and understand a little bit more of the relationship between those funding agencies and how they have gotten us to where we are in our socio-economic soup that we exist in. I really want to see you support our people, buy the books. When if you have a gift, let's just make a culture out of the audience of this week in interview. And if you have to give a gift of a book that is written by a Dominican. And speaking of that, the Flying Crapo, um, third book has just come out. A lot of short stories that are using some of our folklore and mixing it to sci-fi and really producing some really great work, entertaining work. So I encourage you to um, to support that as well. Let's just do it our culture instead of buying some candle or some other kind of thing. Let's make it a culture to just buy a book written by one of our people as a gift. We have also entrepreneurs that are producing a lot of healthcare products and household products. Let's buy that and give it as a gift. Let's start getting that culture where we buy our own things, and by giving it to a gift, you show that you appreciate it enough that the person may also, oh, that's nice, and they go try something for themselves. Okay, but I was saying thank you to Dr. George, Dr. Dion George, for taking the time to come and to give us this education on the different economic theories and to help us to identify that where we are in the stage of our development, we need to get a little more technical. We cannot continue to be flying this plane by the seat of our pants. We have to get the manuals and read the manuals, understand the situations where we're in, and apply what is in the manual so that we can take our country deliberately. Because you can play cricket all you want, and you might win matches in Castlereagh, he might play against Salisbury. Salisbury win today, win tomorrow. But if a young man from Castlereagh or Salisbury want to make the West Indies team, guess what? He has to get to the point where he gets formal coaching, and his technique is looked at, and he's given pointers as how to improve his technique, and
Correct,
has
correct.
the same thing with our country. We can get so far by doing what we see around us as necessary. But to take our country to the next level, we need to engage professionals, technicians in the field
Absolutely.
that can point us, and that is what I hope we get out of it, and that's what you pointed out tonight to us. So I thank you for that. I'm going to give you to say a couple closing remarks, and then we close shop.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Drago. I think you have a very good program. I think you're touching on very salient points concerning the development of Dominica and the well-being of our people. Tonight, when I saw the flyer that you sent out, I think it mentioned quality of life. And so I was very busy today taking care of my mom, as you know. And I basically just put something together, try to define, what is quality of life. I mentioned your literacy rate, unemployment rate, uh, you know, how many people that die before their first birthday, different things.
Infant mortality,
Yes, but
longevity.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, you are getting sleepy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, it was good, and I did provide some of the data itself.
Right.
Yeah, and I hope the listening public can appreciate the fact that for a long time Luxembourg has been number one, and then Switzerland is up there. The US is number 12, and then we brought it to the Caribbean, and the Caribbean, it shows that Dominica is not too far behind. But my research pointedly uh, it was in 2019 thereabout, and so I don't know how it is now. I know for sure that our debt has increased, you know, and that's a concern. Maybe that's a topic for another time.
Definitely.
Yes, the amount of
Hmm.
debt that we have incurred
Hmm.
recently. But
Certainly.
but I want to thank you so much. Look, someone just says the excellent discussion, very informative and insightful. Thanks, Dr. George, for your contribution. I want to thank you for your good comment, Mr. Drago. I want to thank you for that medium, for that space where we can discuss the well-being of our people and where we can not be political. Like we never give UWP NEPWI, we never give Labor NEPWI. We spoke there about real economic data and we discuss it on a very objective level. That's my view. Yeah. And so I want to thank you and let me just give a little prayer. May God bless and keep you. And all who is listening to me, may God be with you. And that's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm putting a link in the chat that gives some data as well on our healthcare, and folks can do some homework. When you go to school, teacher give you stuff to do after class. And so I put that there. But Dion, thank you so much, man. Dr. George, I'm calling you Dion because
You
I
can
think
call me,
we're at that
I
point.
can give you a name to call me, you can call me Tui.
Two weeks is your Salisbury name.
Bye bye.
All right, take it easy, man, and I appreciate it. My
Yeah.
regards to your mom.
Yeah.
But folks, a really important discussion that we had tonight. We had that discussion with Dr. George, uh, twice published author, political scientist, researcher, a lecturer. And I hope that you got that stimulation that I wanted to give. Those topics are all too broad to handle in 1 hour. But what I'm hoping to achieve is to get you to think about those things, because sometimes we get so busy, we forget to think about those things. And so I hope that we're able to stimulate that in you and to really interrogate where we are and how we got to where we are, and to really say, we should be asking and demanding for more. Uh, are we getting enough from the University of the West Indies? Are we getting enough from the state college? Are we getting enough from our high schools? Are we getting enough from our churches? And when I say enough, enough in terms of output, in terms of relevant education, in terms of knowledge, there's a whole gap that's missing in Dominica and in the rest of the Caribbean is data. How can we organize so that we can collect data that we can use? If the government is interested, they can use it for decision making. But in the absence of them using it for decision making, we can use it to hold them accountable. We can use it to provide private sector led solutions. You know, data. If we don't have data on what are we making decisions, we continue to fly by the seat of our pants. And then we spoke about theories. Theories sounds like something that is you reading a book and then you go do your work. No, theories will inform you so that when you go to do your work, you're not wasting your time and your energy doing stuff in an ineffective manner. Theories educate you into the system of how to do things so that when you go to do it, you're using your resources, your time, and your energy in the most efficient manner. And so, folks, I want to say thank you for staying with us through the hour and a half. And I hope you have a great week. One more time, I want to say congratulations to Miss Annette Sanford, the new Kalinago chief in Dominica. We are hoping that we can get her on the program sometime in August. I think there is International Indigenous People Day, and so we'll try to see how closely we can coincide her coming on the program with that day, and to learn of what her plans are for her people. That's something I'm excitedly looking forward to. Recently, in the courts in Dominica, there were two cases against government that were decided upon. There was one case where I think the people who work on a Wednesday were were taken to court by the government for whatever really disruption, disorderly conduct, and that case got discontinued and thrown out of the court. And so we want to congratulate the defendants. They were not, the government was the defendant because they took the government to court. So we want to congratulate them on that courage and on the perseverance and the victory. So I'm having one of those guys on um, next week so we can talk about that case as well. So exciting, exciting program. Folks, stay cool if it's hot where you are. Stay safe if it's stormy where you are. Stay encouraged if you lost a loved one recently, and stay motivated if you've just received some kind of accomplishment, a graduation, an anniversary, a birthday. And I wish you the best of health. Um, until we meet again next week, Wednesday, for another episode of This Week in Interview. Good night.